Right, so big news today coming out of The Hague in light of ongoing and continuous failures for the international community to hold Israel to account for their ongoing and incessant violations of international law that it continues to not only commit but get away with as well, shielded as they continue to be by the US and other Western allies. And not only is this important from the perspective of holding Israel to account, but also for the sake of those same international laws it is flouting. Because if they don't mean anything when it comes to Israel, then they don't mean anything to anyone. If they can't be enforced equally against all, then they aren't worth the paper they are printed on. As such, today, a group of 9 countries have assembled at The Hague, and an announcement is expected where they will declare ongoing and coordinated legal, economic and diplomatic measures to hold Israel to account where other structures, to my mind namely the UN here, consistently fail to, building a political structure on top of the legal action begun by South Africa to take Israel to task.
I'm Yanis Varoufakis. We're here at The Hague as part of the Progressive International. I'm on the council of the PI. Very pleased that today we're inaugurating the Hague Group, a group of African and Latin American Global South countries that want to give a political structure to South Africa's magnificent attempt to make Israel answer for the genocide that it's committing in the Middle East.
Right, so that was Greek economist Yanis Varoufakis speaking there from The Hague in his capacity as a councillor of the Progressive International, or PI, a body that came into being in 2020 in a bid to bring progressive political forces around the world together, now including hundreds of separate organisations and representing millions of people around the world. They have convened this meeting at The Hague. And in case you're wondering, the UK does have 2 representatives on PI's council, which speaks very much to how progressive the current Starmer-led government actually is, when they happen to be Jeremy Corbyn, who Starmer expelled, and Zara Sultana, who remains suspended from the Labour Party for daring to vote against keeping kids in poverty, and is likely to stay suspended for her opposition to ongoing arms sales to Israel. Both of these individuals pro-Palestine, pro-peace, and very much against Israel continuing to get away with the genocide as they are. As Yanis Varoufakis explained in that short clip there, though, PI are there to welcome the inauguration of this new body of 9 nations, taking not just a legal stand, but a political one against Israel now, to hold them to account where other nations and other bodies, namely the UN in my mind, have consistently failed to. And we're better to announce this than at the very place South Africa brought their genocide case against Israel and proved a plausible case for that was indeed being committed. Ongoing investigation taking place since then, as far as has been possible, with the genocide Israel have been very much carrying on with ever since. South Africa is, of course, one of these 9 nations. It won't be surprising to you to hear that, forming what is now to be known as the Hague Group. Probably also not all that surprising. The other 8 states joining them in this venture, though, are Belize, Bolivia, Chile, Colombia, Honduras, Malaysia, Namibia and Senegal. Why these countries in particular, though? Well, all of them have already taken action against Israel in one form or another. South Africa's part in this story, I've already mentioned, of course, is quite academic. We all widely know what South Africa has done. A great many nations now supporting South Africa's case against Israel at the International Court of Justice. States including Mexico, Libya, Ireland, Cuba, Belgium and more. Belize and Bolivia have severed all diplomatic ties to Israel already, as have Colombia, who have also stopped weapons purchases from Israel and ceased the export of coal to the genocidal blue and white state, which has been a massive blow to Israel's energy production, their powered stations all still coal-fired. Chile have recalled their ambassador from Israel and have made a referral to the International Criminal Court in relation to conducting a criminal probe into the Gaza genocide. Honduras has consistently condemned the genocide happening in Gaza. Malaysia has imposed a maritime ban on all Israeli shipping, as well as all vessels destined for or coming from Israel. Namibia has targeted Germany, particularly for their ongoing support for Israel and the weapons sales they've carried on with to Israel. The history of the genocide Germany committed in Namibia between 1904 and 1908, certainly not forgotten there. And they've also stopped shipping carrying arms destined for Israel passing through their waters as well, such shipping having been diverted around Africa due to the Houthis' blockade of the Red Sea. Senegal's Prime Minister has committed his country to doing more to stand up for Palestinian rights, saying they are prepared to take more concrete action, and this certainly seems to be the case with this. Here's an excerpt of this story from Malay Mail. There's next to no Western coverage of this event, except for a piece The Guardian has trotted out, which is Well, both sides the argument somewhat in my view. So as per usual, foreign media is doing a much better job of journalism here. Our actions are not punitive. They are preventative, designed to ensure compliance with international law and protect the vulnerable, explained South Africa's Minister of International Relations and Cooperation, Ronald Lamola, in the joint statement. The Hague Group's formation marks a turning point in the global response to exceptionalism and the broader erosion of international law. It sends a clear message. No nation is above the law, and no crime will go unanswered. The Hague, known as the City of Peace and Justice, is a symbolic location for this historic meeting. Home to the Peace Palace, the ICJ and the ICC, The Hague represents the global community's aspirations for a world governed by law, not force. The world cannot stand by and watch when we made a commitment more than 75 years ago that never again shall the world suffer atrocities, implored Namibia's Minister of Justice, Yvonne Dosab. We cannot be and must not be selective about protecting lives regardless of who the victims are. All lives matter. Palestinian lives matter. The Progressive International noted that today's meeting and expected announcement of coordinated legal, economic and diplomatic measures come at a critical moment as international law faces unprecedented stress. Israel's violations in Gaza, documented by international courts and condemned by global civil society, have been met with impunity, enabled by diplomatic and military support from powerful allies. Compounding this crisis, the United States under President Donald Trump imposed sanctions against the ICC, undermining the very institutions designed to uphold justice and accountability. By coordinating legal, economic and diplomatic measures, the Hague Group aims to disrupt the systems that enable violations of international law and hold violators accountable, said the organisation. Of course, this move ought not be necessary if the UN just pulled its finger out. The UN Security Council is turned to every time to deliver verdicts concerning Israel's atrocities, and the US ambassador, as sure as night follows day, keeps on shielding Israel by putting that hand up and using their veto. What we're seeing here should be an enormous embarrassment, in fact, to the UN, because fundamentally a second version of them is being birthed here in effect. And right now it might be a lot smaller, but these are still nations of significant standing, several being in the Americas, trade partners of the US even. And Honduras, for one, have already threatened to shut down US military bases if their people are abused under Trump's deportation of migrants. So could that be a threat extended to this matter? You can imagine Trump screaming about tariffs off the back of this. But if he thinks he's untouchable as he makes numerous goods more expensive for ordinary Americans, too stupid as he is to realise it harms them and not the exporters who still get paid the going rate. He's just tried this with Colombia, of course, again over deportation flights. But with the US heavy importers of Colombian oil and coffee, he's cutting his nose off to spite his face here. On top of that, if the BRICS group of nations don't retain the dollar as their going trade currency, the group looking at producing their own currency right now, 100% tariffs the threat from Trump there. Well, several of these Hague group nations are BRICS members too. It'll be Americans paying the price for Trump's stupidity and Trump defending Israel ultimately, though, having become president again in large part because his predecessor was so pro-Israel and his opponent wouldn't deviate from that. No change, folks. Israel bought your democracy. It doesn't matter who the president of the US is anymore, and the tariff threat simply won't work. This is an historic day. The formation of the Hague Group is an historic moment, and it is going totally unreported in the West virtually. Thus far, no reaction from the US or from Israel, but I dare say we'll see some in the days to come. I can't wait to see what they do next, what they announce off the back of their meeting today. Meanwhile, back over in Israel, the thought of ending the genocide in Gaza is the last thing Benjamin Netanyahu wants, especially as he's being leaned on to end the ceasefire as fast as possible, or it will be him out of power next, because he might be the Prime Minister. But the power lies with someone else these days. Check out that story in this video recommendation here as your suggested next watch. Please do hit like, share and subscribe before you do so though, if you haven't already, to ensure you don't miss all new daily content and help support the channel, which is very much appreciated. The channel passed 92,000 subscribers last night, so that dream target of so many YouTubers of reaching 100,000, possibly getting verified, is edging closer and closer. Thank you so much for everyone who has already subscribed and supports the channel already. And if you're a regular watcher and haven't already, please consider it. And I will hopefully catch you on the next vid, therefore. Cheers, folks.